thing I built inside Claude, and I didn't have to write a single line of code. This you see here is a client onboarding brief. It also contains their contract terms, what they said in their intake form based on back and forth emails, what they're actually worried about, and what I actually need to prepare before the first call with them. Now, let me show you another interesting thing I have. Now, you can see that I do have a scheduled task here, and it runs every Monday on my computer. It goes through Reddit without even me having to prompt it to do so. It goes through Reddit, it looks for specific subreddits with founder pain points and puts them inside a database inside Notion so that I can go through and find pain points every founder basically has or is talking about. Now, before we get into the video, I want to make one distinction and then we can go on. So when you go into your browser and you type Claude AI, okay, and you start having a conversation, you can basically go in and upload a file, and then you can ask questions. They'll talk back at you, and that's very useful. And I know that most of you are already accessing Claude like that, and there's nothing wrong with it. Now, CoWork is that same Claude with hands, because it sits on your computer. You can access it on the Claude desktop app. It runs on your computer, and you can open your folders, read your files, change them, and build new things. Before we actually start, 3 things I would actually want you to turn on so that you can ensure that you're getting the most out of Claude. So the first thing has to do with artifacts, okay? So I encourage that if you don't have this turned on, just come into Claude and just make sure that you have artifacts turned on, because if you have it turned on, then it means that you can build dashboards. Now, the other thing I would want you to turn on as well is Claude Dispatch. Now, to turn on Dispatch, you have to come down to settings, and then you scroll down to CoWork, and you want to make sure that Dispatch is on. The reason why you want to turn this on is that maybe you're outside and you have a task running on your computer, and this happens to me a lot. Sometimes I have to go do like a daycare run. I have a research task on my computer. All I have to do is, sometimes it would require me to provide approvals. So all I have to do is approve from my phone while I'm outside. So if you want to access Claude while you're outside, then make sure that you have Dispatch on. It's very important for level 3 in this video. And then the other thing I want you to also make sure that you have on is capabilities, right? So just make sure that this is also on. Make sure that you turn all these on, at least to your own satisfaction, right? So we already have artifacts on. So other capabilities that you're interested in, just make sure that you have them in. And there's also other things like Claude in Chrome. Now, if you want Claude to perform some research for you, you want it to go into Chrome and basically open browsers and stuff on your behalf, then you want to make sure that you enable Claude in Chrome so that you can do that as well. Now, the other thing I want to touch on is global instructions. So in order to access your global instructions, you basically come into CoWork, and then you scroll down to global instructions. So I already do have my global instructions set up. So you apply these instructions here so that anytime you want to use CoWork, it will basically have those instructions in mind. So if I click on edit, you can see that I have my global instructions set up. Now, your global instructions is basically a standing brief, okay? So it should apply to everything that you ask it. So in my case, it tells that I'm not technical, that it should never send anything to a client, and that it should push back on me when I'm about to do something dumb. Okay. What you can see here is my clients folder. It contains screenshots, invoices, my intake forms, personal details of clients, and everything. As to whether you should be storing personal details of clients on your desktop is really up to you. But I just had to mock something up for this exact course. So I do have my clients folder in here, and I'm going to show you how I can get Claude to actually talk to my clients folder. So the first thing is, this is Claude. Make sure that you're not on the chat. So this is Claude chat and this is Claude CoWork. So what you want to do is you want to point your folder, or you want to point CoWork to your folder, to your client's folder. This is what you do. You just click on the folder button, and then you basically point CoWork to your client folder. It's going to ask you like, do you want Claude to change files in client files? You can always say always allow. Now, my folder is not really organized properly. I mentioned CoWork can actually do things on your behalf. So you can actually ask CoWork to basically organize your folder for you. So because CoWork is already connected to your folder, like you see here, it's already connected to my folder here with a check mark. So what you can do is you can just say, help me organize this and tell me what needs my attention. I'm going to hit enter. The good thing about Claude CoWork is that as it's working, you can see the step is completed. So the first one is it's read and mapped every file in the folder. It's going to go ahead and verify the invoice numbers independently. It would also cross-reference notes against contracts and session notes. It's going to flag any confidential and personal information files. It's going to propose a folder structure. It's not going to move anything without my approval, and that's the beauty of it. And all these things are things that you can actually set in your global instructions. Okay, so you can see that it sort of showed me everything. The client file, what needs my attention. So it's saying that nothing in this file has been moved, renamed, or deleted. That's fine. So it's telling me that I'm not billing anyone right now. It's telling me that this company has paid me on an unsigned contract. So you can see that it's sort of gone through the files, highlighted everything that needed my attention, and it has also proposed a folder structure for me here. So I can actually go ahead and tell it that, okay, based on the proposed folder structure, can you go ahead and like move things around? I'm not going to do that, but I throw this challenge to you. Once it gives you a proposal, just go ahead and ask it to move things around. Now, this is how this differs from a chatbot, okay? So if you were working with a chatbot, it won't have the ability to perform all these tasks. It won't have the ability to basically like do all this for you. If I had uploaded all of that to Claude in a browser to the chatbot, it could have told me what was in the files, but it could not have moved a single one of them. Now, if I asked it to move it, of course, it's going to do that. But then it means that I have to always go in and do that. But with this now, I can actually set a routine that every Monday or every Friday, it should actually go into my folder and just check on things that I'm actually missing out when it comes to my client. Now, I'm going to leave it exactly here. It's highlighted a few things that I should be wary of. It's talked about the duplicates. It's talked about sensitive information, like confidential, like I need to move that out. I'm going to come back to all this at the end of that. But the most important thing I want you to take away from the way Claude work differs from a chatbot is the fact that you can actually do things on your behalf, okay? Once you actually understand the basics of how Claude CoWork works, then I can assure you that you are a full Claude CoWork user and you're ready to move on to the next level, which is level 1B. Let's call that level 1B. So you can see that it's asking, do you want me to move the data file first? And if so, where should it go? It's asking me this because it was able to flag that I had confidential information of clients on my computer, right? So it's asking me where to put that. So that's the beauty of Claude CoWork. If I said move it, I could give it like a destination, maybe put it in Google Drive or something along those lines, and it would actually move it on my behalf. But I don't want to do that. But that is basically the main difference between using CoWork and just using the chatbot or using just the chat functionality, because with CoWork, it can actually go into your folder and work on your behalf. It can open folders, it can change names, it can do all of that for you. Whereas with the chatbot, yes, you have to upload it. Yes, you have to manually do all that. Now, let's move on to level 1B, okay? So now that we understand how CoWork acts, okay, I wanted to do something even more for me. I wanted to analyze the invoices in my folder and build me an interactive dashboard. And I wanted to show revenue over time, revenue by clients, how long clients stay, and anything that should actually worry me. And I also wanted to flag any duplicates before we start. So I'm just going to give it this exact prompt. And because we enabled artifacts in the beginning, it's sort of like going to use the artifacts functionality to actually build a dashboard for us. And if we were going to be doing this on the Claude browser, right? If we're supposed to come into, let's say, Chrome, for instance, right? If I was supposed to come into Chrome and access Claude from there, I'll be actually limited by the number of files I can share, right? I have about close to 79 files in that folder. And when you're using Claude in the browser, you're actually limited by the number of documents. I think it caps it to about 20 documents. So I wouldn't have been able to do everything in the browser. So let's say I come in here and I select charts and I select 70 files. I won't necessarily be able to do that. But because I'm actually using Claude CoWork, I can actually do that. That's one amazing benefit of actually using Claude CoWork, because the browser version actually cap you at 20 documents. And this is 79 invoices across 3 files. So it's actually going to be reading all of them. Okay. I'm actually doing this on Opus because I ran through my Fable 5 credits. It's going to take some time. It's slower because it's being a lot more careful. And for money, of course, I want it to be very careful. So you can see the interactive dashboard from, I can toggle between last 6 months, 2026 only. You can see all the clients in here. You can see the total invoice, monthly retainer, money you've already earned, revenue that's been flat. Is actually giving me everything I need. And like I said, this dashboard is interactive, so I can actually click through and be able to get access. I can see revenue by client. I can switch it to a table view, and this is an interactive dashboard, right? And I was able to basically use CoWork to build this exact dashboard. Isn't that amazing? It's actually giving me all the insights I need. They've applied my brand, because if you've been following me across social media, you know that I use this purple brand. So it's applied my brand colors, because these are things that I've actually defined already. So again, it's giving me the top 3 clients here by revenue, and it's as interactive as it can get. You can continue to build on top of this, but I'm going to leave this exact one here. Now let's move on to level 2. Like if you've been able to capture level 1, level 1B, let's move on to level 2, because level 2 is where this whole thing you see, I know that it looks impressive already, but level 2 is actually where it stops being impressive and it actually starts being useful for you. Because doing this once is a party trick, but doing it the same way every time is actually a business for you, right? So let's move on to the concept of skills. And I do have a video on this channel that actually goes very deep into what Claude Skills are, or what the concepts of skills are in general video, so that you actually can go get like a more deeper understanding of what skills are. But Claude basically calls them skills. ChatGPT also has a concept of skills. I also do have a course on Claude Skills and ChatGPT skills as well on LinkedIn Learning. I'm going to actually link that as well in this video. And you can access that course for free if you have a LinkedIn premium account as well. So I'm going to link all of that in this video so that you can go check them out. But just think of a skill as your own SOP. And when I say SOP, what I mean is your standard operating procedure. Is a thing you would actually write down for a new hire, or let's say you've been doing video editing the same time, or you've been doing client onboarding the same time and you've actually written them down. Some people document these things in wikis and stuff like that, so that let's say if you have a new hire, you can actually provide it to them. So these are stuff that you would actually write down for a new hire, except that when it comes to the concept of Claude Skills, you just only have to write them once. And unlike a new hire, it actually gets followed every single time. You can actually call it and all that. Now, because I already do have a course on Claude Skills, I'm probably gonna link it in this video, but I can just do a quick demo of how you can actually create a skill and how you can actually call a skill. So again, like I mentioned in the beginning, in order to make sure that you have your skills and everything working, just make sure that you go to settings, make sure that capabilities, like you scroll down and make sure that you enable these important capabilities. One example is the Claude code execution and file creation. The number of capabilities you want to make sure that you enable so that your skills can actually work well for you. But yeah, like in order to access skills on your computer, all you need to do is you click on customize, and then you can see that once you click on customize, you can see that all these skills are skills I've created. If I click on, let's say, this particular skill here, it will actually give you like a description of what the skill does. when I want to use it, when I call it, and all that. And these, again, like I said, they're like SOPs. So you just have to define them once. And anytime you want to use them, you just have to come in here, you do the / and you see them all here, right? So these are all the skills I've created. And it's pretty much very easy to create a skill, actually. If you want to create a skill, you can come in here, you click on add. You can create a skill by using Claude to create a skill for you, or you can write the skill instructions yourself. And this could be SOPs you've written down already. You just click on write skill instructions and then you put them down in there. Or you can actually go on GitHub. Those ones are scary, but you can go on GitHub and download a skill off GitHub as well, and then upload it. You find a skill online, you think you actually need it, you can go on there, download the skill, upload them on here. You can also record your screen. Okay, you can, like, if you have steps you follow, maybe this is how you edit your videos, you can actually record your screen and then upload it as well to Claude. And based on the steps that you demoed in the screen recording, Claude can also create the skill on your behalf. So it's actually pretty neat, the fact that once you define the skill, you can actually use it anytime, right? And in your business, depending on the things you do all the time, you can have, let's say, something like a client's brief skill, and maybe so based on the responses people have put in your intake form, you can basically use that client's brief skill to actually prepare for your first call with them. So that could be a skill that you can actually write. Because I do have a full tutorial and a course on this, I don't want to go deep into it, so I'm going to link all those resources in the video so that you can go check them out. Now, the other thing I want to also touch on in Claude CoWork is the concept of connectors, because your skills would actually sometimes need them. So for instance, I do have a skill which is the Reddit Pain Miner skill, and this Reddit Pain Miner skill, I talked about it earlier on in the beginning, the fact that it goes on Reddit, go to specific subreddits, try to understand the pain points founders are going through so that I can use that for my own purpose. This particular skill actually relies on a connector from Apify. So I'm using Apify to do the scripting, even though I can actually use CoWork to do the scripting now, actually. So this is a connector. If you were writing software, what you would typically do is go into Apify, get an API key and plug it into your application, and then it will do the scripting for you. But you can actually connect it into Google, to Claude as well. And so anytime the skill is working and it gets to that point where it needs to call a connector, it's actually going to call it. Also, other connectors I use here like Notion. So I now don't like manually create tables in Notion anymore. If I'm doing something, like for instance, if I'm asking Claude to do some research for me, the other day I asked it to do some research for me, and I basically said just dump everything in Notion. So because I have the connector connected, what it does is that it goes into Notion itself, it creates the entire database, everything for me in Notion. Likewise, Google Drive, if I want to move something, I can just say like, can you move this file to Google Drive, and it's actually going to do that for me as well. Plugins are more so a combination of skills and connectors. Anthropic does have its own like plugin. So for instance, if you want to write your product manager, you want to write feature specs and stuff like that, there's a product management plugin from Anthropic, and it's connected to, it has its own connectors and stuff like that. So it will actually like make work a lot more easier for you. Anthropic also has like partners that also like produce plugins for them as well. And like I said, these plugins will typically go with a connector, right? So Zoom, for instance, you just need to make sure that you have your Zoom connector connected as well, so that it can work for you the way you expect it. So here's what I actually like about skills, right? You can basically hand those skills to your virtual assistant. So if you have a virtual assistant and they have access to Claude, you can actually just download the skills and hand it over to them, right? If you have a contractor, you can actually download the skills, hand it over to them, or whoever is actually covering for you while you're away. And they don't need to know how you write your client brief. They don't need to know how you actually structure things, because you've defined everything once in your skill, and it would actually do the job for you, right? And that's the first time I've been able to actually hand off something to somebody who used it while I was away, and it's been a life changer, guys. Now, if you've watched up to this point, congratulations, because you're now an intermediate at this. You're now getting better at this because you're now doing a lot more complex stuff with Claude CoWork. Now, let's move on to level 3, right? Because I told you that the first level is basically using Claude to work on files you already have. The second level was you basically training Claude to do things once for you. And the third one is you actually now handing things over to Claude, letting it run without you. So that's what we are going to talk about. And that's basically the concept of scheduled task. So anything you have in here, right, you can always click a drop down and you can click on schedule, right? So what I did right now was creating a dashboard, creating a client's brief. These are things that you can also ask Claude to schedule for you, so that you can, if I click on schedule, it's going to ask you like set up to run the schedule. You can actually provide it with like sometimes, like maybe you want it to run every Tuesday. See, I have some set up here. This, for instance, is running every Monday at 8 a.m. This is running every Tuesday at 8 a.m. So you can actually set it up manually by clicking on schedule task, and it's actually going to be running this for you, running on your computer. And this is where Claude Dispatch is very helpful, because like I said earlier on, sometimes I'm on a daycare pickup or I'm on a daycare run, and all I have to do is like I see that Claude is working in the background, because on my phone I get notified to approve stuff, allow stuff, and all that as well. So it's very helpful if you want to schedule stuff, and you can always ask it to approve automatically, but then I just prefer to have it ask me for certain important things as well. So yeah, so let's say you want it to remind you Mondays to send a client's brief or send a client's email. You can basically come in here and you can put it in here, and it would basically do that for you. Every active client, you can ask it to every Monday morning go through your client folders, let you know what's outstanding, so that you can actually start your day knowing very well that things are covered. These are the things, these are my blind spots, and it helps a lot actually as well. Okay, now let's move on to level 4, because everything so far has been one task at a time. You ask it to do stuff, and then it goes ahead and does it for you, and then it will sometimes forget because like you're not keeping the memory. But then projects is where everything comes together, right? A project is different. A project is like a workspace that actually remembers every single thing you do, right? So you can basically put your clients, have a project for every client you have. Let's say I have a client called Kestrel Consulting, so you can have a project for every single client you have. You can basically provide it with like instructions, and you can basically type in like what you're trying to achieve, and you can actually, even if you want to still keep clients information on your computer, then you can actually use a folder. So you can create a folder on your computer, and then you can drop all your client information there, and then this project is always going to point to that folder. So it really depends on how you want to handle this. You can either put everything in the folder, or you can actually put all the client's information in here. But the most important thing is that like it's not always going to start a new session. It's always going to remember information, because it keeps the memory in here. So it has all the internal data, everything. So anytime you come here and you prompt it, you ask anything about your clients, already has that information. And this is why I said that once you start using projects, this is where it actually stops being like a chatbot, and that's where it's actually being a system, because it actually knows your business. And I actually have one of these for clients and even my own individual projects as well, and not just clients. So it makes it a lot more easier for me, because I don't have to start from scratch. It remembers everything for me, and I don't have to be the bottleneck. I don't have to remember everything myself now, because the concept of projects, it puts everything in compartments, so it becomes a lot more easier for you to run your business. Now let's talk about guardrails, okay? And guardrails, the concept of guardrails are not just specific to Claude, AI in general. Anytime you use an AI assistant, whether you're using Gemini, ChatGPT, and all that, for someone who is handling other people's data as a business owner, for someone who is handling other people's data, for your clients is the first thing in their head, like what exactly where does my data land, right? And that's the first question in their head as clients. And answering it now before you actually set up everything is worth more trust than any feature I've actually shown you here. So remember this, like in the beginning when we were actually organizing the files, we saw that it actually flagged that we had some customer data that was supposed to be confidential. So let me just go back to that first demo you saw. It actually flagged that there was a customer data that was confidential. So it said that Dara's personal details has some confidential data. So it said here confidential data. So it has a client's date of birth, their home address, their mobile number, their brother's number, and note about their divorce sitting loose at the folder roots. So that's like a wrong place. So things like this are confidential data. And mind you, most of this data I use the mock data. So it's not like I store customer data on my computer or anything, but these are like mock data, right? And so things like this can actually happen. They can be sitting loose on your computer, and CoWork can sometimes flag this for you. So here's what I'll not actually let AI do, and I'll encourage you to actually draw the same lines when it comes to using AI. It should never send anything on your behalf, okay? No matter how confident it is, like you should, even if it sends something on your behalf, you should actually check it first, okay? It can draft and then I read it and then I send it, because I want to maintain that client's trust, that client's relationship every single time. Not because it writes badly, because I've trained this thing to actually write in my voice, but because the moment a client feels like they're actually talking to a system or they're talking to AI, you actually lose a lot of trust, okay? They actually lose a lot of trust in you as a business owner. So you want to make sure that you don't lose that part of your business. So you can make AI draft it, make sure you read it, make some changes if you have to, but make sure that you never ever let AI like send everything blindly on your behalf. Another thing I also do is I make sure AI does not touch anything I wouldn't be comfortable explaining to that particular client, okay? So you'd be embarrassed to tell someone that you gave their file to someone else to look at it. And you say, yes, AI is not a human being, but then again, like clients or customer relationship is very important. So you want to make sure that you don't want to put any of your clients through that. And it doesn't get the last word on anything that involves judgment, because this is still our power. This is still our power as human beings, and you don't want to give that leverage away to AI, right? You want to make sure that you're still human, you're still like owning the judgment when it comes to your business. So it can tell me 3 clients churned in month 4. I cannot tell me why, because it wasn't on those calls with me. Maybe I bombed in those calls, right? So it doesn't have that judgment. Of course, you can also connect your Google Calendar, you can connect your meeting notes and everything, and maybe it might be able to piece 2 and 2 together, but like there's this human judgments that we have that honestly AI cannot replace. And I think that's our greatest advantage as human beings when it comes to AI. So 3 things or 4 things. AI prepares, you communicate. Okay, that's it. That's the line. I don't think that line should move, especially if you are giving so much data to AI. Now, one more thing I want to talk about, and I'm sure this might actually cost me in the comment section. Most of you should not just go straight and start creating projects over the weekend, right? Because if your onboarding process exists in your head, like you've not even written them down, then that's the place to start. You need to first that's the place to start. You need to first start by like writing down your SOP, like how things work for you first, before you even think of like automating it. If it's slightly different every time, depending on how busy you were that week, then automating it this way does not actually fix it. It just makes the mess run faster. And now, because it runs faster, it can actually run faster without you watching, and then you can end up in a lot of trouble. So just make sure that you are first writing it down, making sure that you're having this process consistently, and then now you can create a skill for it. Now you can create a schedule for it. Now you can create a project for it. Don't go straight to create a schedule for something you actually haven't written down, because it's not going to work that way. So write it down, 1 page first. What happens in what order, who does it, and if you can write that page, that's your real project. and the tool is not going to do it for you. You need to write it down. Like I said, you need to have your SOP, put that SOP in a skill. If it's something that you do on your computer, record your screen, get it to create a skill, and then basically call that skill every time, turn that skill into a schedule. You're good to go. Okay, so do that first, and then once you do that, that level 1 will just take 20 minutes, and then you can continue all the way to level 4. So after watching the video till this point, you watched through level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. What should you actually go and do this week? The first one, make sure you go into Claude, turn on global instructions, and grab that prompt I mentioned from my school community. It's just going to take you about 2 minutes. Let's interview you so that you know the exact instructions to use. Now, the second one is point it at one messy folder on your computer, just one messy folder, and see what it finds. Okay, you'll be surprised. And then 3, take that thing that you do every single time the same way and make it into a skill like I showed you. And that's all you can do for this week. Let me know in the comment section below which of the 4 levels you're actually stuck at. I'm going to be reading all the comments, and I'm going to try and build my next video around a recurrent pattern or themes in the comments. Now, if you want more of these kind of simple AI systems for people running real businesses and not just tech demos or tool demos, let me know in the comment section below. Also, subscribe to this channel, and thank you for watching till the end. It means a lot to me, and I hope to see you in the next one.